E.T. Can you say that? Can you say E.T.? E.T.
E.T.
The image of a boy and an alien flying across the moon on a bicycle became the symbol of movie magic itself. E.T., the extraterrestrial, landed in theaters on June 11, 1982, and proved that Steven Spielberg could make audiences cry over a puppet so ugly it traumatized the actress playing the mom, while simultaneously becoming the highest-grossing film of all time. Spielberg directed his most personal film, transforming his childhood loneliness after his parents' divorce into a story about an alien botanist stranded on Earth who befriends a lonely kid.
Do you talk? You know, talk. Me, human. Boy. Elliot.
Henry Thomas played Elliot, the boy who discovers E.T. and hides him from authorities. Drew Barrymore was Gertie, the little sister whose genuine reactions came from believing E.T. was actually real. And Dee Wallace was the mom trying to hold her family together while not noticing the alien living in her son's closet. The film cost $10.5 million, looked like it cost 3 times that, and earned $792 million worldwide, while making everyone sob over a creature that looked like a melted tortoise. It spawned merchandise, video games, endless parodies, and established Spielberg as the most commercially successful director in history. But behind every glowing finger and heartfelt goodbye was chaos. Child actors genuinely terrified of the puppet, crew members operating E.T. while hidden inside cabinets and floorboards, and creative choices so risky that the studio begged Spielberg to change them. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because it really helps the channel grow. Now, let's investigate 15 wild facts about E.T. the Extraterrestrial, starting with number 15. Number 15. Harrison Ford shot scenes as Elliot's principal, and Spielberg cut them all. Harrison Ford appears nowhere in E.T., but he filmed an entire scene as Elliot's school principal that was completely cut from the final film. Ford did the cameo as a favor to Spielberg and his then-girlfriend Melissa Matheson, who wrote the E.T. screenplay. The scene showed Elliot being disciplined by his principal for releasing frogs in biology class. Ford shot the sequence wearing glasses and a suit, playing against type as an authority figure. The scene was meant to establish Elliot's rebellious nature and his troubled emotional state at school. Spielberg filmed the entire sequence, got the performance he wanted from Ford, and then watched it in the editing room. The scene worked in isolation, but killed the film's pacing. It slowed the opening, delayed E.T.'s appearance, and gave too much attention to Elliot's school life when the story needed to focus on his home life. Spielberg made the difficult decision to cut Harrison Ford entirely from the film. Ford reportedly wasn't upset, understanding that the scene didn't serve the story, even though his performance was good. The deleted scene has never been officially released.
I see you fine young people from good homes, every advantage.
Spielberg has said he doesn't want to include it in special editions because the cut was correct and adding it back would weaken the film. Here's the celebrity cameo nobody saw. One of the world's biggest movie stars filmed a complete scene in the year's biggest movie, and audiences never knew because the director chose story over star power. Number 14. Drew Barrymore genuinely believed E.T. was real during filming. Drew Barrymore was 6 years old during E.T. production, and Steven Spielberg deliberately maintained the illusion that E.T. was a real alien rather than a puppet. Spielberg wanted genuine reactions from Barrymore.
Elliot, look what I made for you.
So he never broke character around her or explained how the puppet worked. Spielberg would talk to E.T. between takes, asking the puppet how it was feeling and treating it like a living creature. The puppeteers operating E.T. would respond in character, maintaining the alien's personality whenever Barrymore was present. Barrymore developed a genuine emotional attachment to E.T., treating the puppet as her friend. She would talk to E.T. between takes, bring it snacks, and get upset when puppeteers had to adjust the mechanics because she thought they were hurting it. Her belief that E.T. was real is visible throughout the film. Her reactions aren't performances. They're genuine emotional responses to what she perceived as a living being. The authenticity made her scenes some of the film's most emotionally powerful. Spielberg only revealed the truth to Barrymore years after filming wrapped. She's said in interviews that Learning E.T. was a puppet that felt like discovering Santa Claus wasn't real. The childhood illusion was shattered, but she understood why Spielberg had maintained it. Here's the directorial deception that created magic. Spielberg essentially gaslit a 6-year-old into believing aliens were real to capture authentic emotional performances. Number 13. E.T. was designed by the same artist who created the alien xenomorph. E.T.'s design came from Carlo Rambaldi, the Italian special effects artist who'd previously created the terrifying xenomorph creature for Ridley Scott's Alien just 3 years earlier. The same hands that built cinema's most horrifying monster created its most lovable alien. Rambaldi was hired specifically because of his alien work. Spielberg wanted someone who could create a believable extraterrestrial, and Rambaldi had proven he could make audiences believe in creatures from other worlds. The irony of asking the xenomorph designer to create a friendly alien apparently didn't bother anyone. Rambaldi worked from Spielberg's concept sketches, which were inspired partly by paintings of Albert Einstein, Carl Sandburg, and Ernest Hemingway. Spielberg wanted E.T. to have an old, wise face that conveyed intelligence and sadness. Rambaldi translated those ideas into foam, latex, and mechanics.
Separate artistic part and mechanical part. All mechanical parties are inside or outside of the camera, but it's very important.
The design process took months. Rambaldi built multiple versions of E.T. with different capabilities: a full-body suit for walking scenes, an animatronic head for close-ups, and various partial figures for specific shots. Each version had to look identical while serving different technical purposes. The final E.T. design had over 150 animatronic parts, including 85 points of movement in the face alone. Rambaldi's mechanical expertise made E.T. capable of incredibly subtle expressions that sold the character's emotions. Here's the design irony. The artist who made audiences scream in terror at the xenomorph made them cry with love for E.T. The same creative mind built cinema's scariest and sweetest aliens. Number 12. Spielberg told Henry Thomas his dog died to make him cry on camera. Steven Spielberg used a controversial directing technique to get genuine emotional performances from Henry Thomas. He would tell Thomas to imagine his dog had died right before filming emotionally intense scenes. The method worked, but has been criticized as psychologically manipulative. For scenes requiring Elliot to cry or show deep sadness,
well, he's mine, and he lives with me, and he likes me. And he wants to stay here. He likes it here.
Spielberg needed authentic emotion from a child actor who couldn't necessarily access those feelings on command. Adult actors have technique and life experience to draw from. 9-year-olds don't. Spielberg's solution was to give Thomas specific emotional scenarios to imagine. The most frequently used was asking Thomas to picture his beloved dog dying or being taken away forever. Thomas would think about losing his pet, genuinely become sad, and Spielberg would roll camera to capture the real tears. The technique produced incredibly authentic performances. Thomas's emotional scenes feel real because the sadness he's experiencing is real, even if the source isn't the scripted situation. His tears for E.T. were actually tears for his imaginary dead dog. Modern child psychologists and acting coaches have criticized this approach as potentially traumatic. Repeatedly asking a child to imagine beloved pets dying could create genuine psychological distress. Spielberg was essentially using emotional manipulation to get better performances. Thomas has said in interviews that he understood it was directing technique and wasn't traumatized by it, but the ethics of the approach remain debated in film education. Here's the directorial manipulation. Spielberg made a child repeatedly imagine his dog dying to capture authentic sadness. The tears that made audiences cry came from manufactured grief about pets. Number 11. Henry Thomas improvised the audition that made Spielberg cry. Henry Thomas won the role of Elliot through an audition improvisation so emotionally powerful that it made Steven Spielberg cry. The audition has become legendary in Hollywood as an example of child acting at its finest. Spielberg asked Thomas to perform an improvisation where government agents were taking E.T. away, and Elliot had to protect his friend. There was no script, just the scenario. Thomas had to create the entire scene spontaneously while Spielberg watched. Thomas created a desperate plea to imaginary agents, begging them not to take E.T. insisting the alien was his friend and they had no right to separate them. The improvisation was raw, emotional, and completely authentic. Thomas wasn't performing. He was genuinely accessing deep emotional pain. Spielberg started crying while watching the audition. He stopped the camera, told Thomas he got the job, and knew immediately he'd found his Elliot. The improvisation was so good that elements of it made it into the final script. Thomas was 9 years old and had limited acting experience, but his emotional availability and imagination were exactly what Spielberg needed. The audition tape has been shown in film schools as an example of what great casting looks like. Here's the audition that changed everything. A 9-year-old improvising a scene about an alien that didn't exist made the director cry and secured one of the most iconic child performances in cinema. Number 10, the film was shot in chronological order, so the kids' emotions would build. E.T. was filmed almost entirely in chronological sequence, an extremely rare and expensive practice in filmmaking. Spielberg insisted on this approach specifically, so the child actors' emotional attachments to E.T. would develop naturally and authentically throughout production. Filming chronologically is inefficient and costly. Normal productions shoot all scenes in one location together, regardless of when they happen in the story. This saves money on setup and travel. Shooting in story order means constantly moving between locations and rebuilding sets. Spielberg believed the financial cost was worth it because the children's performances would be more genuine. As production progressed, the kids would form real bonds with the E.T. puppet and the puppeteers. By the time they filmed the goodbye scenes, the emotional attachments would be real.
Elliot, why don't you come with me?
No! No! No!
Sorry.
No!
The strategy worked. By the end of filming, the child actors were genuinely sad about finishing the movie and saying goodbye to E.T. Their tears in the final scenes weren't acting. They were real grief about production ending. Shooting chronologically added approximately $1 million to the budget and extended the production schedule by weeks. Spielberg argued that the authentic emotional performances were worth every penny and every extra day. Here's the expensive emotional investment. Spielberg spent $1 million in weeks of time just to make children genuinely sad. The financial waste was strategic artistry. Number 9, E.T.'s voice was performed by a chain-smoking elderly woman. E.T.'s distinctive voice was created by sound designer Ben Burt using recordings of Pat Welsh, a 67-year-old woman from Marin County, California, whose raspy voice came from decades of heavy smoking. Welsh smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and her voice had the exact gravelly quality Burt wanted. Burt discovered Welsh working in a camera store. He overheard her speaking to customers and immediately recognized her voice as perfect for E.T. He approached her, explained the project, and hired her to record E.T.'s dialogue. Welsh spent 9 hours in a recording studio, speaking E.T.'s lines, grunting, and making various sounds that Burt would later process and combine with other elements. Her voice formed the foundation of E.T.'s sound, giving the alien its warm, gentle, slightly wheezy quality.
E.T. phone home, E.T. phone home, E.T. phone home, phone home, phone.
Burt then layered Welsh's voice with sounds from other sources, including Spielberg himself, actress Deborah Winger, burps, and other organic sounds to create E.T.'s final vocal signature. But Welsh's recordings remained the primary component. Welsh was paid scale rate for her work, a few $100s for the 9-hour session. She became part of the most successful film of the 1980s for minimal compensation. She passed away in 1987, but her voice achieved immortality through E.T. Here's the vocal origin. One of cinema's most beloved characters was voiced primarily by an elderly woman whose decades of cigarette smoking gave her the perfect raspy voice for an alien botanist. Number 8, the flying bicycle scene required shooting against blue screen before blue screen was standard. The iconic image of Elliot and E.T. flying across the moon was created using blue screen technology in 1982, before blue screen compositing was a standard industry practice. The technical challenges were enormous, and the sequence pushed the limits of what was possible. Industrial Light and Magic had to develop new blue screen techniques, specifically for E.T. The existing technology wasn't refined enough to handle the complex compositing required for the flying sequences.
Whoa! Whoa!
The bike had to be separated from the blue background, combined with moon footage, and made to look seamless. The child actors were suspended on wires against a blue screen stage, sitting on stationary bicycles while crew members rocked the bikes manually to simulate movement. The kids had to perform while dangling in harnesses for hours, maintaining emotion while being physically uncomfortable. The compositing work took months. Each frame required hand-painted mats and careful color correction to blend the elements convincingly. ILM artists worked frame by frame to remove wire supports and create the illusion of flight. The technology was so new and temperamental that many shots had visible matte lines and color mismatches that had to be painstakingly corrected. What looks effortless on screen represented hundreds of hours of technical problem solving. Here's the technical breakthrough. The sequence that became the film's most iconic image was created using experimental technology that barely worked. The magic was achieved through technical innovation and manual labor. Number 7. Spielberg. Banned all guns from set and made. Cops carry walkie-talkies instead. Steven Spielberg made a controversial decision during E.T. production. No firearms would appear in the film. Even though the script called for government agents with guns pursuing the children, he replaced all weapons with walkie-talkies, creating one of cinema's most ridiculous visual choices.
Got him at the bottom of the hill.
The original script had government agents carrying weapons during the chase sequence, where they pursue Elliot and E.T. Spielberg felt that showing armed adults threatening children was too dark for the film's tone, even though the threat was implied rather than explicit. So he had all the extras playing agents and police officers carry walkie-talkies instead of guns. Adult men in tactical gear chase children while holding communication devices like weapons. The visual is absurd when you notice it. Critics and audiences didn't particularly notice or care in 1982, but Spielberg later regretted the decision. In 2002, for the 20th anniversary special edition, he digitally replaced the walkie-talkies with guns using CGI, restoring what should have been there originally. Then he regretted that decision. For subsequent releases, Spielberg reverted to the walkie-talkie version, admitting that digitally altering his original artistic choice was wrong, even if the original choice was questionable. Here's the creative choice Spielberg regretted twice. First, he replaced guns with walkie-talkies, then replaced walkie-talkies with digital guns, then replaced digital guns back with walkie-talkies. The flip-flopping revealed his uncertainty about the right creative approach. Number 6. Multiple performers operated E.T. simultaneously from hidden positions. E.T. was never operated by a single performer, but required multiple puppeteers working simultaneously from various hidden positions around the set. Bringing E.T. to life was a complex coordinated effort involving up to 4 people at once. Mime artist Caprice Roth performed inside the E.T. suit for walking scenes, giving the alien its distinctive waddle and movement. Roth was small enough to fit inside the suit.
Appointed 2 guys to keep E.T. alive, so whenever you came over to talk to him, he could react to you.
And had the physical training to create believable alien movement. For stationary scenes, E.T. was operated remotely by puppeteers hidden underneath platforms, inside cabinets, or behind false walls. One operator controlled the eyes, another the mouth, a third the neck movements, and sometimes a fourth handled arm gestures. The set had to be designed with hidden compartments and crawl spaces where puppeteers could position themselves to operate E.T. without appearing on camera. Scenes were carefully blocked to ensure camera angles didn't reveal the hiding spots. Communication between puppeteers was constant. They wore headsets to coordinate movements and ensure E.T.'s actions looked natural, rather than like independent body parts being controlled separately. The coordination required was immense. Spielberg himself often operated the eyes while other performers handled the rest, creating a bizarre scenario where the director was literally inside his own film's set, coordinating with hidden performers. Here's the collaborative illusion. E.T.'s every movement required multiple people hidden throughout the set, working in perfect coordination. The alien that looked so real was actually several humans pretending to be one creature. Number 5. The Reese's Pieces product placement made Mars executives regret refusing Spielberg. M&M's was Spielberg's first choice for the candy that Elliot uses to lure E.T., but Mars executives refused to allow their product in the film. Hershey's jumped at the opportunity with Reese's Pieces, and the product placement became one of the most successful in marketing history. Mars executives reviewed the script and decided they didn't want M&M's associated with an alien movie. They worried the alien character might be scary, or the film might flop.
I was really determined with E.T. to test the effects extensively, the mechanical effects, before I ever got to the floor, because I knew when I got to the floor.
They declined Spielberg's offer without negotiating. Hershey agreed immediately to feature Reese's Pieces. They paid nothing for the placement, but committed to promoting the film in their advertising. It was a relatively new product that needed exposure. After E.T. released and became a phenomenon, Reese's Pieces sales increased by 65% within 2 weeks. The candy that had been struggling in the market became a household name overnight. Hershey's stock jumped. The product placement is studied in business schools as a perfect case study. Mars executives watched their competition benefit from the opportunity they had refused. M&M's missed out on being associated with the most successful film of the decade. The decision became legendary as one of the worst marketing rejections in corporate history. Here's the refusal that cost millions. Mars said no to E.T., and Reese's Pieces became a cultural icon. The executives who worried about the film flopping watched their competition profit from the biggest hit of the 1980s. Number 4. Spielberg. Directed the entire film from video monitors and never looked through the camera. Steven Spielberg directed E.T. entirely by watching video monitors showing what the camera was capturing, never once looking through the camera viewfinder. This was revolutionary in 1982, when most directors worked with their eye pressed to the camera. Spielberg used a video assist system that transmitted the camera's view to monitors positioned near him. He could watch the scene unfold on screen while simultaneously directing actors and coordinating puppeteers. This let him see the frame exactly as audiences would, while maintaining awareness of the entire set. The approach was particularly valuable for E.T. because Spielberg needed to coordinate multiple elements simultaneously. He could watch E.T.'s performance on the monitor, while directing the child actors and operating E.T.'s eyes himself from underneath the puppet. Other directors mocked the approach as impersonal and disconnected from the craft. They argued that looking through the lens was essential to understanding the image.
But I had all the story. Pretty much I had the whole narrative plot in my head.
The success of E.T. vindicated Spielberg's approach. Within a decade, video monitors became standard on every major production. The technique Spielberg was criticized for became industry standard practice. Here's the innovation that seemed wrong. Spielberg's refusal to look through the camera was considered unprofessional until E.T. became the biggest hit in history. Then everyone copied him. Number 3. Spielberg screened Satyajit Ray, films to teach the kids naturalistic acting. Steven Spielberg prepared his young cast for E.T. by screening films by Indian director Satyajit Ray, specifically the Apu trilogy, to teach them naturalistic performance styles rather than typical Hollywood child acting. The kids watched foreign art films as their primary acting training. Spielberg hated the overly precocious theatrical style that dominated child performances in Hollywood films. Kids who delivered lines like miniature adults, who hit marks and played to the camera, who performed rather than behaved. He wanted something completely different. For E.T. Ray's films featured child performances that felt completely real and unaffected. The young actors in the Apu trilogy didn't seem to be acting at all. They appeared to simply exist in front of the camera with total naturalness. Spielberg wanted that quality. He gathered Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, and Robert McNaughton and made them watch Pather Panchali and other Ray films. He explained that this was how he wanted them to perform, not acting, but being. Not delivering lines, but living them. The kids initially struggled to understand what Spielberg wanted from foreign films, with subtitles they could barely follow. But the visual lessons in naturalistic behavior eventually clicked. They learned to underplay rather than overperform. The result is visible throughout E.T. The child performances feel remarkably real and unaffected.
Okay, here we go.
Phone.
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 Compared to typical 1980s child acting, the Ray influence transformed how American child actors approach their roles. Here's the unconventional training. Spielberg taught American kids to act by showing them Indian art house cinema. Naturalism came from studying foreign films about poverty in Bengal. Number 2, Drew Barrymore ad-libbed the line that made Spielberg keep her in the film. Drew Barrymore wasn't Spielberg's first choice for Gertie, and he was considering replacing her after initial screen tests until she improvised a line during her audition that made him laugh so hard he knew she had to stay. Barrymore's audition required her to react to a puppet plant from outer space. Spielberg showed her the fake plant and asked her to pretend it was real.
Drew Barrymore could only work between 4 and 6 hours, and Robert could work a few more hours, but as the kids' ages decreased,
Most child actors would have just screamed or acted scared. Barrymore looked at the plant, paused, and said completely deadpan, "I don't like his feet." The specificity and absurdity of the complaint caught Spielberg completely off guard. A 6-year-old criticizing a fake alien plant's feet demonstrated comic timing and imagination beyond her years. Spielberg asked her to elaborate. Barrymore improvised complaints about the plant's appearance with increasingly specific and ridiculous observations. Her natural comedy and fearless improv skills convinced Spielberg she was perfect for Gertie. Many of Barrymore's best moments in the final film are improvised or partially scripted. Her natural ability to find unexpected emotional or comic beats within scenes made Gertie more than just the little sister character. Here's the audition save. Barrymore was about to be replaced until one ad-lib joke about plant feet convinced Spielberg she was irreplaceable. Her spontaneous weirdness secured the role. Number 1, the final scene made Spielberg cry. Every time he watched it for years. Steven Spielberg has admitted in multiple interviews that he cannot watch E.T.'s goodbye scene without crying, and this remained true for years after the film's release. The scene's emotional power affected him so deeply that watching his own creation would reduce him to tears. The goodbye scene where E.T. touches Elliot's forehead and says, "I'll be right here," was the emotional culmination of the entire production. Spielberg poured his childhood loneliness, his parents' divorce, his feelings of abandonment, all into that moment. When Spielberg watched the final cut in the editing room, he sobbed. When he attended the premiere, he cried. When he showed the film to friends and family, he cried. For years afterward, if he happened to catch E.T. on television or needed to watch scenes for anniversary editions, the goodbye scene would make him emotional. Spielberg has said that E.T.'s goodbye represents every painful goodbye he experienced as a child when his father left, and his family structure collapsed. The alien leaving was Spielberg processing his dad leaving, and that wound was deep enough that his own artistic expression of it could make him cry decades later. Here's the emotional vulnerability.
the way this ended, and we should never revisit it again. And the studio agreed.
I'll be right here.
The director who created the scene cannot watch it without being destroyed by it. Spielberg's most successful film is also his most personally painful work. And there you have it. 15 wild, weird facts about the film that made everyone cry over a puppet and redefined what blockbusters could be emotionally. From Harrison Ford's deleted cameo to Drew Barrymore genuinely believing E.T. was real to Carlo Rambaldi. Designing both the scariest and sweetest aliens in cinema to Spielberg, telling Henry Thomas his dog died to make him cry to teaching kids acting through Satyajit Ray films, E.T., the extraterrestrial, was controlled chaos disguised as heartwarming family entertainment. The film that required Spielberg to emotionally manipulate children, that was shot chronologically at enormous expense just to make kids genuinely sad, that featured multiple performers hiding in cabinets operating one alien, became the most successful movie of its time. The production where Henry Thomas improvised his way to stardom, where Mars refused what became Reese's Pieces' greatest triumph, where Spielberg directed from video monitors everyone mocked, created something that transcended its technical limitations. Which facts surprised you most? Drop your answers in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the film that proved puppets could make grown adults sob, smash that like button and subscribe for more behind